Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Our World Today, the live discussion. Um, we have a lot of things to talk about today. We are going to talk about the blockout that people are organizing, I guess, against celebrities and the way it's linked to wealth, to Israel and Palestine and Hamas. And then we are going to, after that, talk about how Russia and China are deepening their relations following the sanctions around the world very quickly. And then we're going to talk about how the experience of an escaped dissident from China. And yeah, that will be most of our program for today. So without waiting on too much, we're going to dive straight away into this Blockout 2024 story because it's it's like as much a cultural moment as it is, I guess, a political moment, just because this is something that is impacting, like, I guess, every one of us in different ways. So basically, what happened is that last weekend, I think last weekend, was the Met Gala 2024. And I guess for people, it looked kind of dystopian. Uh, the theme was very like very ethereal, like the garden of, I don't remember like the exact theme, but it's like the garden and it's based on um a book, but the way it is translated for people is the Garden of Time. Yes, thank you. Um, the way it translated in the Met Gala was obviously like very rich, very like nature themed. I guess costumes, like outfits that were very expensive, as one would guess for the Met Gala. Otherwise, like you would not be invited. And it was all over the media for a few days. And then basically like the influencer Ailey Bailey, she posted something saying like let them eat cake, which is not actually what Marie Antoinette said. Um, that sparked the revolution, but people said decades after that that that's what she said, and that is what sparked the French Revolution. And so obviously, like for people, it was very like a very heavily like very heavy like phrase to pronounce on the reel with music and glamour and things like that. And so people were outraged and they started saying that they would disengage with interacting with her content and basically block her. And that started some sort of like people would say like a revolution. That's I almost want to laugh because a lot of people are making a reference to the Hunger Games and saying that they were literally watching the Met Gala from District 12, and also that people were that it was like the wealth component, right? Um, they're they're richer than ever, like the rich are richer than ever, and the poor are poorer than ever, and people are struggling to put food on the table and pay bills, and then you see that, and it's kind of dystopian, and we're the one giving them attention, and we're their currency, like our attention is their currency, is what people would say, and then obviously like in light of what is happening in Israel and Palestine, like this also sparked the outrage of people, but most of the time was around blocking people that did not speak out on what people call like the genocide that is happening in Palestine at the moment. And so they would be blocked out. And the people that actually spoke out were elevated. There were not many celebrities, I mean, and the others like are adding days after days to a list of people to just you know, stop interacting with until they react. And yeah, that's about it. Like I feel like everyone that was on TikTok could feel the anger that was happening this weekend. It was very overwhelming, I would say. And I just want to open it up to you guys because I could keep talking for a while about this, but I'd rather we just like discuss this, like have a dialogue there about what's happening actually. What do you feel about this? Have you followed it? Followed everything that happened? And yeah, just I want to hear what you think, first of all.
I feel there's a truth on both sides when it comes to, the angry mob saying, like, we enjoy your presence and we gave you the fame through our intention. Why aren't you standing your ground? Why aren't you saying something about this?
Mm.
And then on the other side, I feel like there is, like, even in within ourselves, there is like a point where we need to go deeper and understand what's going on so that we can get a clear expression of how we stand. And if we are diving deep into this, of course, the celebrities could also be misinformed and want to, dive deeper without having to say something that they probably fully don't understand. So I can understand the truth on both sides, and anger probably won't be the best solution on getting a resolution for this. And it's funny because the Garden of Time is based on a story where these elites are in a garden and they have like these crystal flowers or crystal roses, and they see like an angry mob headed towards them. So anytime they see like the mob is coming closer, they just pluck one of the crystal roses and it turns back time. So it's kind of like the same parallel of what's happening now. It's like an angry mob is coming towards the elite, and, you know, I guess they're wishing if only there was a way for us to push back that angry mob. But instead of course, pushing it back, there must come a solution or like a clear, I don't know, understanding of what's going on and a clear stance of what's going on. So it's hard. It's hard for like a celebrity or even any person, even a history teacher, to really get a clear stance and be able to express that thoroughly without having, an angry mob on either side saying like, oh, how could you say that? Or, oh, I disagree with you on that. And of course, you shouldn't not say something because of disagreement, but it is a difficult conflict to represent your voice in for anyone.
So I'm a little bit unclear. Like it feels very opaque, like there's a surface level thing happening here that's not quite the thing. Like remember last year we had the whole conversation around cancel culture, and this is kind of cancel culture on steroids. And I have this sense that, while there's some things that feel a little bit ridiculous, they're still based in a level of truth that there are more people struggling, and the divide between the haves and the have-nots is growing. And I see that personally from the perspective of the team that I work with, where the people at the bottom end of the earning continuum just really have a tougher go at life because life has just become so expensive. And so their buying power has been eroded. And then you see a story about somebody wearing a dress that could probably feed your family potentially into perpetuity. And I think it does make people a little bit uncomfortable and feel disenfranchised by this whole concept of glamour and how glamour seems to almost be a little bit frivolous at this point in our history. And, just economically, life is much more challenging. So you don't want to see somebody that looks like they're a walking chandelier at the cost of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I do understand that. Although, when I saw this initially, like the whole the blockout thing, I felt like, oh, yeah, this is kind of just resentment because people don't like they they feel like, why does this person get to have this level of wealth, and I don't. And it's just like, well, because like you haven't created it in your life. Like you're offering value at this level and you're angry that you're not getting compensated for offering value at this level because you're not, so that's part of it too. And I'm just like, I just don't I understand though, because these upsets about wealth and money and like it's about overcoming the sense of powerlessness and this feeling of like um not valuing yourself, right? And it takes a lot of work and effort to transcend poverty. It really does. But, you know, we've all done it at least in some ways before. I know Nadia recently did. She had a story in the community newsletter about that, vibing up in wealth vibration. So, and like getting more financial wealth and stuff. So congratulations to you, Nadia, for that. But maybe you can share more about that too, because I was fascinated by how this topic coincided with your story coming out in the newsletter. I just felt like that's what this is about, is people feeling like, oh, I could never like create more wealth for myself.
Yeah. You can't be mad at people for their success, and
Yeah.
you also can't control what people do. Like if someone became wealthy for being a celebrity, um like they can do what they want with that. Like you can't, it's just because they have wealth or platform, like
Yeah.
they're not obligated to take on the world's problems. Although some people, once they do come into more wealth, they feel called to be more philanthropic or look at issues like that. But
Yeah.
like you can't control or force people to do that. And people can do what they want with their success and wealth.
Yeah.
I feel that regardless of what wealth status, whether celebrities or people who adore the celebrities are in, one thing that is holding them back, all of them back from their value, is speaking their divine truth, whether it's to speak it just for an understanding. I mean, if a celebrity were to say, like, I completely support genocide, right? That is something that they're feeling. And we, as, children of God, should have a compassionate space to hold anyone's feelings and to be able to, discuss that with them. But if everyone is holding back their valuable truth, they're not able to not only, ascend to a next vibrational world status, but they are giving into fear, whether it's they don't want to express their feelings or they want to berate someone for not expressing their feelings. You cannot point fingers at someone. Why aren't you expressing your feelings? Why aren't you expressing your truth? Rather, focus on your own garden, focus on how your truth can be expressed and creating that discussion. Hate mongering and creating a group to instill a block or, hate culture is not going to resolve anything. If anything, it's going to block even more communication. Whereas we can, show ourselves as a compassionate human being and recognize that everyone needs to go through those steps. First, they accept that they don't feel good about the situation. Then they accept, like, okay, I'm willing to hear out another side. And then, okay, I'm willing to understand that both sides are, going through turmoil right now. So that really, I feel that there's a lot of fear and a lot of holding back of their own value. And that value could really skyrocket their own wealth. So.
I feel like there are three different components that we're talking about here, and that's part of what makes this so complex. First of all, is the wealth. Like, I can understand how hard it can be when you can barely make ends meet to see something that you feel is ridiculous because you don't understand fashion or you don't care about it because you have to pay bills. And I feel like, yeah, even people in the fashion industry this year, watching the Met Gala, said that they felt like sick to their stomach because it felt like so offshore. And I feel like they're just feeling the gap in energy that we are feeling here amongst like the wealth status. But there is also this component about like learning what true wealth is and learning what to do. And what upset me about this, even though I understood their point of view, what upset me about this weekend was that it was also an attack to, oh, because people are suffering, like I can't actually experience and express joy. And obviously, like, I have to be sensible about the way that I express my joy and the way I feel my joy on the daily. But I need to express and feel my joy in order to refuel, in order to be able to speak out on these things like every week. And I feel like if we're going to go off of the anger energy, we're not going to last long. And that's the thing. Like, I went out of TikTok because I felt like it was too much, and I come back scared that I'm going to feel the same things, and the anger is always dying out because that's not a sustainable way to do things. Second component is speaking out as a person and as a divine being and having a divine purpose. I feel like a lot of people are angry because they say that with their platforms and with their money, celebrities could change so many things for so many people with their voice. First of all, I feel like they do, but I'm not sure that they do this much, you know? And also, like, we all have bills and we all have things to pay. So even though they don't have the same things to pay and they don't experience difficulties, like, it's not a reason to give $70,000 to each and every donation cause in the world. Like, it's not, I guess I'm guessing that their discourse is a little bit of a gap as well, because you cannot expect, even though you put the celebrity there with your attention as a currency, you cannot expect to be repaid with something that is not their purpose, you know? Like, and I feel like we all have to do these things. Like, should I pay more money to help that person in my family, or should I do what feel good? And maybe if that doesn't feel good to like pay that person, maybe I should feel like, is it a good relationship? Like, and of course I can pay them, but like, do I feel used in that way? Like, it's the same, you know? And also, I agree also with Nadia that there is something about, you know, speaking out. And I feel like the more divine you are, the more naturally you can speak out. Like even once could have sufficed to express that you cared about these things, even though you don't owe anyone anything about it. But I feel like in a way where we're so polarized and people are so angry whether you speak out on one side or the other, obviously people are not going to speak out because they're scared of being canceled. And so they feel like they're being canceled because now they have not speak out. So it's like a losing game, that system of cultural relationships that we have right now is a losing game because you can't win this. And the third thing is the complexity of the war that we're talking about itself. Obviously, we're also talking about Sudan and Congo. And I really did the work on questioning myself this weekend. I went ahead and I did the research. I researched the neutral papers. I researched the Palestinian sides and I researched the Israeli sides. And when people say that it's too complex and people are answering, no, it's not complex, it's a genocide and it's one-sided and only Palestinians are suffering, there are Israeli hostages. There are people that actually hate the Israelis and also like Hamas, every time the gates for humanitarian aids are being open, Hamas is bombarding them so they can't stay open. And when they try to drop humanitarian aids from the air, like Hamas is saying that it's actually killing people from the air. So you cannot win with Hamas. That's the thing. And obviously, like the genocide, like thousands of people had died, and that's such a dire situation. And we all want this to stop, obviously. But the reason why people are not speaking up is that they don't have answers because you cannot win with Hamas as well. Like you cannot do a relationship with Hamas. So this is not about free Palestine. Obviously, like everyone wants free Palestine, except like some Israeli extremists, and it's not even like all of the people in Israel. But like, please, like it looks like even people are like I don't know, getting caught up in emotion and fear and anger. And it's always been that way. Like, we've always been like more pro-Palestinian, and that's normal because they are really suffering and are really like suffering a real apartheid in their land. But also like, you know, we cannot trust Hamas. Like people are not understanding that Hamas is also playing a game that is making it so much more difficult to end this war. And that's what people are saying is complex. And so to respond to them that it's not complex and with anger and with canceling, I don't understand it as well. But it's such a confusing thing. And obviously, like if you take only the numbers of people that have died, obviously, like you would say, free Palestine, this is normal, you know? But it's not, you know, it's not a power of influence this time, is what I feel. It's not even a power of influence. At the end of the day, we're talking about like how we could have expressed our divine influence, how we can promote our wealth for better things. And it's not just that. But yeah, that's like the three components that I see. I'm just like, how do you guys feel about that? I'm just curious because like I know like through my research I have very like not arrested ideas, but I can understand how this can like feel a little bit like arrested, like and radical to people. So I'm curious to know what you feel.
I feel that you're giving your power away if you are waiting on celebrities to be the voice for you, because each and every one of us has a divine voice, and we can shake mountains, we can move mountains by our divine voice. And we don't have to rely on famous people, rich people to give us the approval and the voice that we need. And to feel that like you're weak and you can't make a big impact is essentially giving your power away and continuing that cycle of poverty for you and that poverty consciousness.
I feel like you touched on something quite important in terms of the expectation to be rescued does speak to giving your power away. But I feel like there's a bigger component, and it's probably a deeper wound of being taken from still. Because we have a significant wound around this disenfranchisement that has happened with people being pushed aside, being marginalized, and all sorts of other things. And so the core of it is hurt. And I feel like that core is what you were speaking to earlier, Nadia, around fully feeling the feeling. I feel like people are acting out on the hurt, but not choosing to heal in the hurt space. And it's something that came up for me in my coaching session this week, was that we have the sense of abandonment, but the abandonment is actually that place at which you're not fully feeling the feeling so that you can fully heal the hurt. So, it's and yes, it's easy for us to point it out now because we have gone through the cycle of healing and getting to the core or the root of things. And I think that's the learning, right? The learning is that once you have been able to do that, how do you then teach other people to do that? How do you point out to them that yes, we understand the hurt is real, we're not diminishing the hurt, but there's also a component in which you have to sit in the hurt so that you can heal through the hurt. And when I say sit in the hurt, I most certainly don't mean take up residence and then make it everybody but your problem.
Granville, that was brilliant. I really enjoyed listening to what you said. And we're the kind of talk that gives you the space to feel your feelings throughout so that we can get to that core, and you can compassionately sit with yourself and, sit with those perspectives that we give you.
Yeah. I also feel like I really enjoyed what you said. Like, I feel like people don't even know where to start with it. So I feel like in here, it is kind of the job of people that do understand where to start, including us to get the information out and reach them more and more so that we can finally put it past us and finally have new ways to interact with each other.
Yeah, and that's basically also that's what you were saying earlier, Eurine, about like if it's your purpose, then you should do it. Like if you feel guided to do it and you feel purpose in it, then you should do that thing. But if you don't, then you don't have to do it. And that's how a divine system or society functions, right? Is that people are doing what they're called to, what brings them the highest joy. And I feel like it's not like these causes that people are advancing are unworthy or meritless. Like there is merit in what they're saying for sure. And like our social system is not favorable to like working things out peacefully. I mean, it's getting there. We have a system, like, people, you can get out of poverty, but our system's not necessarily like making it super easy and awesome, for people to do so if they want to. So they are raising good issues, but it's kind of just like to make a blanket obligation for anyone who has any sort of fame and any sort of platform to speak out about certain issues in a certain way is like not really productive for all the reasons we've already said. So yeah, it's like it's controlling instead of, it's based in fear instead of being based in love and being like, you know I don't know, encouraging people to pursue their joy and their purpose. You know what I mean? This is the opposite. This is threatening people into doing something that you feel they should do, you know? And that should be, that's unnecessary, because you're not trusting that if we all do the part that we feel guided to do, then things come together, you know? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And to kind of highlight that even more, what you said and what all of you said actually, like the research shows that a lot of people are actually like very have a very like a good notion of what is happening and are right in saying that the situation is complex. Like they don't agree with what Hamas did on October 7th, but they don't also necessarily agree with how the Israeli government is attempting to to get back their hostages and treating the situation in Gaza. They have very different views on Palestinians and Hamas and Israelis and the Israeli government. And so like they're very empathetic with the cause of people, but they also understand that the governments are kind of blocking our advancements in the relationships in one way or another. And also like the US is has always been very like has always warned Netanyahu to not go over like the human rights system in order to win this war and get back the hostages and things like that. And I know there is a lot of pressure from extremist group and also from the families of the hostages in Israel, but is not doing it in the right way. And parts of the government are definitely seeing Palestinians as animals or aliens, like basically like they don't want to humanize them. And so there is a part of like um, there is some truth in the genocidal patterns that people are picking up on. But the US is very much like, hey, we're stopping support now because like you're not respecting human rights, you're not respecting our partnership, you're not respecting other people. We are just only going to send aid if it's possible. Like we're not sending you arms anymore. And see, like it's not it's on the international community is doing so much, and Netanyahu just said like he will continue to march on Gaza with or without the US. So you can see that it's like dude, like and so it may also be a turning point in the way that the relationships are between other countries and Israel. Like, is there going to be an intervention to stop them? We don't know. But yet again, like we're not going to know if all we hear is the angry buzz of our own emotions, because emotions are clouding the fact that there was a lot done this week actually for Palestinians. Even though like it's not yet enough, like it's something. And yeah, that's just research, yeah, healing, seeing things from a non-emotional perspective, even though that's difficult. Like I'm still emotional about it, but I'm not like using my anger or fear, to talk. And I feel like that's hopefully the message that we want to express to people is that there is actually so much more than the one side and the anger and people against you, or the wealthy versus the poor, or the privileged versus the people that don't have privileges. Yeah.
And I think that's it, right? It's that energy of perpetual comparison. Like the haves versus the have-nots, the comfortable versus the uncomfortable, the villain versus the victim. There's always this comparison, always this fighting energy that kind of what almost begs the question, like, when does humanity actually start to sit down and realize or recognize each other's humanity? Like, at which point do we choose that lesson as opposed to the lesson of vilifying the other?
Yeah, and that goes back to powerlessness. And feeling that powerlessness enables you to feel like a victim. And then you go to us versus them. And one thing I learned when, overcoming poverty consciousness is, where is your energy going? Those who have successfully manifested a very lavish and rich life had to focus and had to refine their energy in a very particular way. And if you're giving into anything social media is telling you, creating an angry mob, you have to ask yourself, where is that energy going, and is it beneficial to yourself? And is it valuable to you?
Yeah. And so, talking about powerlessness and, where your focus is and what your choices are, I kind of want to talk about the two other topics of this week, which are that China and Russia are strengthening I'm guessing like their trade. Yes, their trade. I wasn't sure, like I thought I had forgotten, but yes, their economic trade. In order to still secure an economy and alliances, even with Russia's sanctions, and also in truth, like some countries taking back capital from Chinese territory. And also the fact that there are Chinese dissidents that are trying to escape, get out of China. And so there is like there is an overall energy here that we need to talk about. And so I'm curious to know, like, very briefly, like, Granville, would you mind summarizing like the situation about the relationship with Russia and China? And then I would like maybe Isaiah and Sage to say how they feel this connects to the Chinese dissidents that they researched upon this week.
Oh, yeah. So the China-Russia partnership, surprisingly enough, did not start after the war with Ukraine and the European and US sanctions, the Western sanctions. They actually started entering into high-level trade conversations before the actual war with Ukraine. And it was a very tentative arrangement. But now that the sanctions have basically eroded almost 40% of Russia's gross domestic product, they've had to find an alternative market. That alternative market now moves gas and oil resources to the east as opposed to the rest of Europe. But that only accounts for 10% of what they've lost against the 40% loss. And so it's not as lucrative a market as what it's made to sound. But because of it, it's strengthening trade in defense equipment and advancement of defense systems that both the Chinese and the Russian defense forces are bolstering. So the relationship is much more comprehensive. And because of the greater sense of comprehensive relationship, there's also almost a desire to de-dollarize their bilateral trade. That, having said that, though, it doesn't have a significant impact against the backdrop of the huge dollar-denominated trade across the world. But it serves quite a bit of nuisance value, because where sanctions would have started to act as a deterrent to their warring behavior, they're just finding alternatives to bolster some of their loss of income.
All right. Yeah. Okay. And Sage, did you want to kind of explain what was happening in China?
Yeah. So the story that we found, so it was the story of a man named Xiong, and he lives in the United States now. And in fact, he ran for the first congressional district seat, so the House of Representatives, in New York in 2022. And but he's from China. He took part in the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests against the Chinese government or its policies and everything. And because of his participation in those protests, the government cracked down on those protests. Like, there's those famous photos of tanks being in Tiananmen Square, right? And somebody being a lone person, like being in front of the tank, like that became iconic around the world. And this Xiong was one of the people who participated. So anyway, he fled all the way down from the north of China to Hong Kong. And there was this group of concerned citizens who allied with like entertainment industry people, and also the triads, who are like criminal gangs, or like the mafia in southern China, basically. So they allied together in this project called Yellowbird, and they got people out. They established connections between China and the United States, and they got people out of China. And Xiong was one of those people. So he came to the US and just started building a life for himself, joined the military, served in the Iraq War as a chaplain and stuff. And then, like I said, ran for Congress in 2022. But what happened was, according to an FBI private investigator, the Chinese government has been approaching people in the US, including that PI, to try to they were trying to sabotage Xiong's campaign for a seat in the House of Representatives in the US. So they received requests to dig up dirt on him, make up some stuff about him, or get some people to like beat him up or cause him to have a car accident, basically, something like that. And so it sounds strange, but apparently the Chinese government will go to these lengths. And he noticed people following him, cars following him, people hanging out around his house at like in the dead of night and stuff like that. And it's just like, why is this happening? Yeah, because the Chinese government doesn't want someone like him to be high profile and to be like oh, I escaped China because of the political repression, and look at me now, I'm now a United States congressman and stuff like that. So, and it's not just him, it's been a pattern that a lot of escaped Chinese dissidents have experienced. So, yeah, I thought that was a crazy story and definitely illustrative of people's courage and how you really need to, like, yeah, you've got to face something down fully and within yourself too, because things do literally follow you, you know. um but yeah, I felt like it was a cool story of like courage and, yeah, with all that. So
Yeah, thank you for that. I was interested by your analysis on China's reaction and the fact that you said that China was kind of angry, not really having any power there, but trying to. And I feel like for Russia and China, there is something about not focusing on the energy in the right space, which is funny because like we talked about that, exactly that in the last topic. But there's definitely this energy of not focusing in the energy in the right space and bleeding so much energy out in the spaces that you kind of have to patch it up in other ways. But yeah, it kind of feels like I don't know, your ship is sinking, but you're trying to patch it up with little bits of like band-aid in a few places. Like that's the image that popped up in my mind. And obviously that's not going to do anything. And also there are a lot of holes that you're not taking care of in the back of a ship as well. And there was just this thing, like it's just that I just felt like was this bleeding of energy into things that obviously they care about. Like feel like that is important in order to keep the reputation of a country afloat and make it look good, but like it feels like a lot of bleeding in other things, and namely the war with Ukraine. And also like the fact that China is always trying to mitigate so much with their citizens and even their non-citizens, like in other places, instead of like focusing on the loss of economy, of loss of speed inside the country. So yeah, I just that was just my feeling. But how do you guys view the situation? Like maybe you have some different opinions, maybe you're thinking different things about the two different stories. Like we can talk about that too. So yeah, I'm curious about what you feel.
I think China is avoiding the fact that divine truth will always catch up to them, regardless of how much they try to contain within their country. There are divine beings with divine truth that will continue to carry on God's message and God's truth, just like in the example that Sage and Isaiah had researched. So it's just something that they have to learn, a lesson that they need to learn from. And same goes with Russia.
So I kind of have this feeling that, we're seeing real-time examples of a very rudimentary idiom, like that thing that says adversity breeds strange bedfellows. And literally, they cannot get any stranger than what we're seeing play out around us in what is a year that is going to be super defined by elections in 70 countries. It's like it's a very powerful year for choice. And if you take the number 2024, it reduces to a number 8, which is a number of mastery. So at some point, we have to get more mastered at something so that we can close off a chapter. So if you follow numerology, it works in cycles of 9. So by the time you get to number 8, you kind of need to get into that mastery space, because the year 9 is about closures so that you can have your new beginnings in the year 1. So there has to be movement. We have to learn certain lessons through what is happening right now, because unfortunately, as we know, when you do not learn the lesson, it comes back faster and harder and sometimes more painful, because the contrast has to catch your attention. So, like, I'm hoping that all of these things that we're starting to recognize as these patchwork patterns that can actually be turned into, well, hey, we can use this patchwork pattern to create a level of blanket and create some level of cohesion and all of those kind of things, so that we learn the lessons. Because I feel like that is where we need to be. We need to start learning the lessons so we can transcend them.
Yeah, and like the thing about it too is that one thing that makes these things muddy, like when people are trying to say like, is Russia like aligning itself with like the divine or with goodness or love? Is China aligning itself with the same? If they're doing some, if any country is doing some shady stuff, or same goes for individuals too, like they it's not like immediate, right? Like it's not like you think a nasty thought and then like a bird poops on your head immediately, right? Like that's sometimes life can work like that. Like sometimes life can work like that. But other times like our reality, right, on is dense on earth, meaning like your um your choices don't immediately like um make something manifest completely 100%. It's like from The Secret, the movie The Secret, they say like the reason manifestation's a process is because it's more compassionate. You're not going to think of an elephant and then an elephant will come charging right through your door. Like that would not be okay, right? And so there's a reason for that. So the same is true with Russia and China, right? So Russia can be like, well, we can't sell very much our energy in Europe anymore, so we're just kind of going to divert it over to China and India. And although it might be more expensive, like that's probably a hard to service gas pipeline in Siberia, from Siberia to China, and not to mention the shipping of the oil, like all the way through the ocean to India and China. It's more expensive for them. They're not getting as much money from it. It's not as good a deal as they thought, but it kind of helps them stay afloat for longer and like draws things out and stuff. But just because they can avoid a total and complete collapse of their society and economy for now doesn't mean that they're making a divine choice. It just means that it takes time for that choice to build enough energy and momentum to lead to something like that happening. And it may not even be like per se a collapse, but just some sort of transformation that would happen. So I think that's important to keep in mind, is that people have ways of kind of like pushing back and delaying the consequences of their actions, or it takes time for them to pan out. But it doesn't mean that what they're doing suddenly feels good because it appears to be fine. You know what I mean? So yeah, and it's the same way with China. Like they might like be able to paint a picture that might be convincing for their own citizens and stuff like that. But I think for the rest of the world, like when it's revealed that they're going after dissidents like 35 years after one protest that they took part in, it's not good for them. You know what I mean? But they see some short-term value in doing so. But it's weird because looking at it from an outside perspective, you're like, you're just piling on more stuff. Like you're just adding weight to yourself. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's funny that the only comparison that I have right now to kind of back what you're saying is like the fall of USSR. It took like approximately 4 years of things deteriorating, kind of, in order to see the total collapse and change of the nation and the way it functions. And we didn't even know like the whole things that happened, like we're just starting to discover right now, all the little details of why it happened that way and how it works for Russian people. And I feel like a lot of this pattern are still repeated right now, which is funny because you wouldn't think that, you would think that Putin just did like in a total new political direction, and it did, but there is also like a cultural pattern of just like you know, repeating these mistakes and maybe not course correcting on time. And in China, there's also this thing about like it's so contradictory that some of the most culturally interesting things are in this country, and yet like they're treating like their diversity as something to hide towards a unity that maybe makes sense politically, but doesn't really make sense in terms of like how different 1 billion people are. And when you veer out of this path, the way that you are hunted by the government is kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, it's their choice, and they have not yet learned the pattern, which is too bad because, like, again, like there are so many culturally rich things and to do, and China is still like a big destination in terms of tourism, with reason, but that's not what they showcase, and that's not what the people are. And I feel like there is going to be a gap that is going to get bigger between like what the people are and what the government is trying to make them be. But we'll have to see. Like I'm not an expert on that, but it's definitely something to observe. Nadia, did you have anything to say about that?
Not really, just that the choices that Russia and China are making are giving us an opportunity to really stand in our choices, because we are seeing these contrasts so that we can have that gift of an upset, and then we can really stand our ground to what our choices are. Because although we may not have any relations with Russia at the moment, we do have some with China. So it gives us something to think about of where we stand and what we're standing for. And what you were saying about China being like a big tourist country, that's very true. And there is like a, misalignment with the people and its government. When I went there to do research, it showed that the better they knew their economy was, the less they were likely to be concerned about the pollution, which was really dire for them health wise. So I saw that relationship in China, and there we were doing research with Beijing University students, so they also saw that relationship. And yeah, so it's becoming more and more clear of how dissonant the government is becoming with its people.
Yeah, it's true. Any closing thoughts? No. Oh, thank you for this rich discussion It was for sure interesting and yeah, very insightful. And thank you to everyone that has watched this discussion. If you have any thoughts and comments on this, don't hesitate to comment on the chat of the live or in the comments on YouTube. And definitely like and subscribe and share so that we can do more of these and maybe offer some topics that we could talk about next week. So thank you again. Have a good day and see you soon. Bye-bye.